When most people think of 90s full-motion video games, they usually think of god-awful, bottom-of-the-barrel tier games. And for those who've played it, Corpse Killer is probably the specific game that first comes to mind. There are 4 different console versions of the game, as well as 2 computer versions. The Sega CD 32x version and the Saturn version are as decent as console releases go, and I use the word decent very loosely. Corpse Killer is an FMV light gun game that has you play as an unnamed United States Marine who's airdropped, and promptly caught dangling in a tree, onto an unnamed tropical island to stop the evil Dr. Hellman from using a blend of science and voodoo to create an undead zombie army. Helping you on your quest is a blonde reporter who is definitely one of the most obnoxious companions in gaming history, and a Rastafarian driver whose fake Jamaican accent is so thick that he is only technically speaking English. Take a listen to this and both compare the quality of the different console versions, as well as laugh at this really bad fake accent.
Winston Crown. Yeah, man. Hey, man, like your piece, man. Yeah. We gonna party some now, huh? I and I not so dumb, bro. Bet you bad, man, not with that shooting iron, huh? Me tell you what. You help me get treasure here. I be your taxi. Keep you living, man. Third world people gonna have their way. Get the hammer today. Kingston Station.
You're on a cover-up mission, Lieutenant.
Seriously, I have worked with a lot of Jamaicans, and I can understand all of them just fine, but this dude is borderline incoherent. In between video cutscenes with excruciatingly terrible acting and writing, despite the fact that 2 of the actors, the Rastafarian chauffeur and mad scientist guy, are actually decent actors otherwise, there are some gameplay sequences. Unfortunately, like most light gun shooters of the era, these sequences aren't on rails going through an area per se. It's more akin to being in a Jeep that's slowly meandering on a sightseeing trip, as the screen just sort of slowly scrolls from left to right at a constant pace, while zombies rush towards you. The backgrounds are all actual digitized images, and the zombies are all digitized real people in costume, which is actually fairly impressive. What's not so impressive is that there's no background embellishment whatsoever. No burning barrels or anything, and the zombies all look more like a drunk old man stumbling towards the bathroom than the undead monsters trying to eat your flesh. Being a Sega CD and Sega CD 32x release, this version is obviously inferior to the versions released on the Sega Saturn and the 3DO, but there are some notable improvements that the CD32X version makes over the base Sega CD release. First and foremost, the picture quality is a bit better, with slightly less fuzzy blurring, and a noticeable increase in contrast and saturation. There's a bit of an awkward hiccup every couple of frames that's a bit more pronounced on CD32X than on regular Sega CD, but I didn't find that too troublesome. To this version's credit, it does allow the use of an actual light gun. The Sega CD version also allows this, and I've read that the 3DO version does as well, despite it making no mention anywhere in the packaging, although I can't confirm that for myself. And the Saturn version oddly omits the light gun feature, leaving you with awful D-pad aiming. I tried the D-pad aiming on the 32X CD version just to try it out, and it's bad. However bad you imagine it to be, it's worse. The most noticeable difference when you go from CD32X to Saturn is the boost to performance. Whereas the Sega CD and Sega CD 32X had noticeable and regular frame rate stutters, especially CD32X, the Saturn version has smooth scrolling that, from what I could tell, rarely if ever breaks from a solid 30 frames per second. It sounds minute, and you don't realize how much nicer and smoother it is until you compare the two directly, but it really is a big improvement. Much less drastic, but still noteworthy, are the improvements to video quality. Being a beefier system, the quality of the video clips is improved quite a bit, although the boost isn't as immediately noticeable or as significant as the improvement to performance. There are a handful of other changes that are a lot more minor. A difficulty setting has been added, in case you want to play a game that's both really bad and impossible to beat. There are now zombies that pop up right in your face and cover the whole screen in a lame attempt at a jump scare. They also added in English subtitles, since the Rastafarian driver's dialogue definitely does not count as English in my book. It's certainly not the Queen's English. Unfortunately, the biggest changes made in the jump to Saturn was negative: the control options. Unlike Sega CD, Sega CD 32x, and 3DO, like I mentioned, you can't use a light gun on the Saturn version. Forget the fact that the Saturn has a fantastic light gun, and in fact was the best system until the Wii 4 light gun games. They don't let you use one at all. You're stuck with the useless D-pad to aim, and had they allowed you to use a light gun for the game, that definitely would have made this the definitive console of the, admittedly crappy, even on a good day, game. But they ruined it with just that one change. Now, I've mostly focused on the retro releases, the Sega CD, 32x, Saturn, and 3DO. But it is worth noting that it did get a modern re-release for the 25th anniversary on Switch, PlayStation 4, and PC, with significantly improved video quality and obviously performance. The game's still not good, but it definitely looks and sounds a ton better than it did 25 years ago, as should be expected. Corpse Killer is not a good game. Visually, it improves over the Sega CD version on CD 32x and Saturn, and it definitely has superior controls on every version except Saturn, but most of the other versions do fall short of the 3DO version, and even a good version of a bad game is still a bad game. It's a good example of what, in the early 90s, the FMV and quote-unquote interactive movie craze was all about, but it also exemplifies that that was a fad that's worth keeping buried in the past. It's a neat piece of gaming history, and it definitely has some of that B-movie cheese and so bad it's good charm, if that's your cup of tea, but even that wears thin pretty quickly once you realize that the game just isn't good. I can't recommend Corpse Killer to anyone unless, like me, you love bad FMV games. Saturn and 32X are definitely in the better half of the versions of the game, but there's just not a lot to love here. Your best bet is definitely PS4, Switch, or PC. My rating for Corpse Killer on Sega CD, Sega CD 32X, 3DO, Sega Saturn, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Macintosh, and Windows is an F.